What is up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. My name is Ben Johnson, and today I'm going to be joined by guest Zac Sopak, and we're going to be talking through video editing tips so that you guys can level up your YouTube videos. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the stream. We're super excited to be chatting today with you guys. It's been a minute since I've done a live stream, but you know what? We're going for it today, and we are joined by special guest Zac Sopak. Zac, what is up, man?
Hey, what's going on, Ben? It's good to see you, bud.
Heck yeah.
Happy to be here on the stream.
Definitely. So for those of you who don't know, Zac and I go way back. We're both content creators. He's super talented. He's really good photographer, really good videographer, does awesome design. And both of us do a lot of video editing. And so today we just want to talk through, share some tips. You know, I recently did a poll on my channel where I asked you guys what type of content you were interested in. And I got a lot of votes for video editing. So I just wanted to go ahead and strike while the iron is hot and kind of get into some tips with video editing. And so again, I had Zac on the stream today because we go pretty far back and we used to work on a lot of projects together. So this is a little picture of us back in the day, making some cool content, some cinematic videos, and just having fun, you know, making lots of cool stuff. And so again, if you guys haven't seen his channel, definitely go check it out because there's a lot of great tips. Zac, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your channel?
Yeah, so kind of similar to the content that you talk about, Ben, just really passionate about photo and video and just everything that goes into that and the creative process. So I just want to help give people value. I started my channel because I'd received so much information from YouTubers. I've learned so much. It was finally time to start giving back. So yeah, if you're looking for more content on just how to get better with photo and video, that's what I'm all about.
Awesome. And yeah, we have very similar channels. So if you guys are looking for more content from me, just go subscribe to Zac and he'll fill you in the meantime while I'm making stuff. But yeah, so we're going to be talking a little bit about some video editing stuff. And so I want to share our first tip with you guys. We're just going to be sharing about 5 different tips throughout this video. And just trying to get really value-packed stuff. And, you know, it's not really a tutorial so much, but we're just trying to share some thought processes and kind of give you guys a peek into like what our thought process is with video editing. And so our first tip today is have a game plan. Have a game plan. I think this is a super important kind of strategy to have when approaching not just video editing, but your whole video really from the beginning is, you know, have a game plan. Don't just kind of go into it blindly, but really put some thought into how you want to craft this edit, how you want it to look like. And one of the ways I'd recommend trying to figure that out is to watch people's content and in a way, you know, try to use some of the techniques that they use in your edits so that you can learn faster. I'm not saying to copy people, but just try to like see stuff that you like and then go try it. That's the best way to learn. Zac, what are your thoughts on have a game plan?
Yeah, having a plan in general is just so crucial to the overall process of creating a video. Like you should kind of go into things like knowing generally where you want it to go. So let's say you're going to be talking about a specific camera, then you probably want to highlight some of the main things, why that thing is so great, why that camera is awesome. And then maybe think about how you want to convey that message properly through what you say, what you show on the screen, whether that's through B-roll or if it's through screen capturing or different things like that. It's just really good to have a plan going into the project so that way you don't get on the editing side of things wishing that you had more, or if you're just not sure where this edit's going to go because you never really set a plan out in the beginning of the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Planning is there's power in the planning. That's something that I like to say a lot. You know, I think that a couple minutes of planning can save you hours of work. And so when you approach your edits, and just your videos in general, you've got to plan it out, because there's going to be a lot more clarity. There's going to be a lot more just clearness in the way that your approach is, and it's going to come across to the viewer. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, so stay tuned. In the meantime, I just want to shout out a couple people here in the chat. What's up, Hamza? What's up, SL Tech Tips? Debauchous. Riley Thornton, how's it going, man? How's it
My
going?
guy.
Melody loves Luna. What's up? By the way, fun fact, my cat's name is Luna. So pretty cool. I love Luna too. Awesome. So back into the tips, something I wanted to share with you guys is, as we mentioned, both of us actually make a lot of videos around these topics. And one that I want to mention that I'll put some links to in the description is my entire YouTube workflow from start to finish. I think that is a really great place to start at if you're looking to kind of level up your YouTube content and your editing. I cover that throughout that series. So definitely go check that one out, as I think it's one that's really a lot of info there. Again, this isn't going to be so much of a tutorial as it is just talking through our thought processes when it comes to video editing, but planning is super, super important. And that's going to bring us into our next tip, which is close the gaps. Close the gaps. And so in this tip, we're going to be trying to talk through a little bit about the actual editing, kind of the choices we make and the structure of the video. So Zach, can you talk to us a little bit about what that's like?
Yeah, closing the gaps, to me, it's just knowing how you're going to, I always use this reference of like connecting the dots. How am I going to connect the dots to end up to the destination where I want people to, like, this piece of value is what I want them to have. So how do I connect the dots? And sometimes it looks different depending on what you have. So if you've got B-roll and you're able to use that B-roll to emphasize the point that you're maybe speaking about through your A-roll, that's awesome. But maybe you don't have that. Maybe you have to do something with like a screen grab or screenshot or something, or maybe you're referencing some other material entirely and you're using that to fill in the gaps. So to me, it's connecting the dots, like getting in the editing process and just finding out what can I use to put in between these pieces to connect the dots from one point to another.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And, when we're talking about closing the gaps, I think there's a lot of interesting ways that you can do that. I think a typical thing that we see in YouTube videos is you have your A-roll, right? So that's you're talking head stuff, this kind of a shot where you're just talking about a product or a technique. And then you choose to cover it with B-roll. And one of the things that can be tricky is sometimes in the edit, you want to have B-roll, but you don't actually have B-roll to use. Maybe you haven't captured it. And so a great technique to use in those times is to cover it with text or a graphic, kind of like I'm doing right now on this live stream. This is like my B-roll. I'm using this to support what I'm talking about. It's not footage that I've captured, but it covers up the screen. And what that allows for is hiding jump cuts and hiding stuff that maybe you don't want to show the viewer because you messed up and then you cut it and it was abrupt. That happens a lot when we're editing. And so having some full screen graphics or full screen text effects can be a really useful tool. Even pictures, that can be really useful to have as B-roll when you actually haven't captured any B-roll. And talking about B-roll, one of the great things you can do, and Zach, maybe you can talk about this a little bit too, is slow motion. I think that's such a great use for B-roll. What are your thoughts on that, and really just B-roll in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, slow motion is awesome. It's a really great tool for content creators, for video editors. And I'll plug this real quick. I thought I knew how to speed ramp properly until I watched Ben Johnson's video on how to properly speed ramp. And so it totally changed my life. But it's really great. Like, so let's say if you're shooting in a higher frame rate, typically 60 frames per second is pretty common. I tend to shoot a lot of 120 frames per second with my camera. And what's really great about that is when you're editing on like a 24 frames per second timeline, so your video is going to end up being 24 frames per second, just 1 second of 120 can be 5 seconds of 24. So it helps a lot to fill in the gaps in what we're talking about, like putting B-roll in. And if I'm like kind of hiding my cuts for my audio that I did for my A-roll, it's really a nice tool to have, because even if you only had 1 second worth of really good footage from a shot, you can actually stretch that out to 5 seconds worth of content. So that's just one way that I love using slow motion or higher frame rate video for slow motion in editing.
Yeah, and I think beyond just the slow motion part of it, there's a lot of interesting techniques you can do. Get into just seeing what you can do with your footage, reverse it sometimes. That's a technique I've done where it's like I have a clip that I shot that I slowed down, and then what I do is I duplicate it and reverse it, and it almost makes it even longer sometimes. So there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do. And one of the biggest things with closing the gaps is to experiment with layers. Okay. So like while you're editing on your timeline, you can stack stuff. Like if you've ever worked in Photoshop or in graphic design at all, even in apps like Canva, there's layers, right? And so there's layers to your edit. And I think when you can really start to understand how to use things to hide other things, and then you're just choosing what you're showing, it's really powerful. When I took back in in college, sorry, I took a black and white film photography class. And one of the most important things I learned in that class was this idea that the photographer's most valuable tool is their scissors. And I think about that all the time when I'm editing, and all the time when I'm trying to structure stuff together. Is the most powerful tool I have is my scissors. And so it's choosing how I'm cutting and what I'm showing to the viewer, and really cutting out the stuff that doesn't matter. And what we say a lot of times here on the channel is cut the fluff. And basically what that means is to just get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter. If you talked for 15 minutes, try to cut it down to 5 minutes, and so that your clear information gets across to the viewer faster. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think that's a good place to kind of transition into our next point, which is a huge part about editing, and that is music matters. Music matters. I cannot tell you how important this is when it comes to your edit. There's so many variables here, but Zac, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are when it comes to music in your video edits?
Yeah, music it's huge. It can totally shift the whole mood and feel, the whole vibe of your video. And I think it's really important to be able to find high quality music that really helps to kind of reinforce either like your personality or to match the mood of what it is that you're shooting. And I mean, honestly, it can like make or break what you're doing, and a lot of stuff that's out there. The quality is maybe not so great, but there's a little bit of, it's an important need, right, for people to have really good music to reinforce the video quality.
Yeah, and I think it's like high quality music is one thing, but in addition to that, it's really being intentional with your music. It's figuring out like what is the mood that I want to have emulated here? What's the vibe? And again, thinking about music that you're choosing as part of your brand. Because I think a lot of the things that, sometimes we just go, especially when you're starting out, and there's nothing wrong with it inherently, but as you develop more as an editor, think beyond just that particular video. Think about your whole brand as, the type of music you use. There's certain YouTubers, when you hear a type of song, you relate it to their style because they always use that style in their videos. I tend to use a lot of like kind of electronic or, kind of lo-fi hip hop beats in my videos. And, that's become part of the vibe there versus, I actually really love alternative rock music and stuff like that, but I don't always pick that for my edits because it's not always on brand for how my content is. And so there's some real intentionality there. You can experiment some, and ultimately picking the music that you like will kind of help develop your brand over time. but just think about that as a whole when you're choosing your music, and beyond that, emotion as well. Zac and I both have the benefit of being musicians. You know, we both play music a little bit. I don't know if Zac's going to bless us with some guitar playing today or not. We'll see. But yeah, so we both know a little bit about music and how it affects emotion, just from the actual, we both play it. You know, when we hear a minor chord, we can kind of know what that's indicating in a song. But if you don't know, and if you're not a musician and you don't have that kind of knowledge, there are tools out there that will really help this whole process. And one of those is Soundstripe. You know, I talk about it a lot on the channel because I just really believe it's one of the best music licensing site available. And one of the things that makes it that way is their browsing feature. You can choose things simply like happy or hopeful, inspiring, chill, calm, angry, whatever it is that you're feeling, and they're going to do the work for you because they have curated everything. Musicians have helped them curate everything to match these moods from a very intellectual and experienced standpoint. And so if you don't have that knowledge, don't worry. There's tools out there like this that can do it for you. So all that to say, music's super important. Be intentional with it. Think about the branding of your channel. Think about the emotion you're trying to convey. Is it a tutorial? Maybe don't have the most hype music in the world unless you're showing a very hype sequence. Maybe do something a little more chill so that the viewer is not distracted by the music. That's a huge one. Don't let the music distract, right? I cannot tell you how many times I've been, even myself back in the day, I watched some of my old stuff and I'm like, oh, this was a horrible song for this video. It just doesn't match. It's too distracting. It's too loud. Make sure you don't run your music too loud either. You know, you want to get the content across. The music is simply a supporting tool. Zac, do you have any other thoughts when it comes to music?
Yeah, I mean, you basically hit it all, I think, where it's just choosing that right type of stuff. Sometimes too, I think about what kind of music. Yeah, I mean, it's just like kind of what resonates with me, or if I'm trying to do something that's more of a tutorial teaching thing, I think about like the kind of music that I listen to when I'm learning or when I'm studying up on things. And so try to like use that to also like convey the emotion, and yeah, just finding like the match for it. Like if you're doing some sort of like epic, if it's like drone shots, or if it's, you know, you're on a mountainside or whatever it is, I don't know, but like you just match the tone. So like if you're showing something that's extremely epic, you want to have that just reinforce the emotion, because ultimately you want it to connect with your audience. I mean, there's other little tips too, like when you're editing, like edit to the beat of the music, and that way it'll land a little bit more impactfully than if you're cutting in between the beats. But that kind of goes back to like you and I having a musical background and like kind of knowing how to feel music and emotion. So yeah, those would be my thoughts.
Honestly, my advice to aspiring editors is to go learn an instrument. Like, I think that would be such a massive win for you in your editing standpoint, just because like go learn piano or something, watch some tutorials and just start to get an understanding of tempo and an understanding of just melody or music. Cause I think it will really just allow you to make informed decisions with your video edits. And I actually want to highlight a comment that we just got from Christian Noel. You only get two senses from videos, sight and hearing. So sound is 50% of your video. So true. That's so true. And so that's why we want to be very, very intentional with not just the way things look, but the way they sound, because that is honestly where you're going to feel a lot more. Visually, you'll get a communication and a message, but it's that feeling of music and sound effects and messaging and the voice that's really going to allow people to feel. And that's such a big part about video editing. So one other shout out for Soundstripe. If you guys are interested in checking it out, use code creative15 to save 15%. Now let's move on to our next tip. Smarter, not harder. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. Awesome. So smarter, not harder. Zac, since you are pictured in this picture, why don't you start us out with talking a little bit about the tip of smarter, not harder?
Yeah, smarter, not harder for me is I like to use different assets to basically save me time when I'm going in to do video editing. So when I'm thinking of working smarter, not harder, like we've already planned things out. Like if we're going back to our first tip, we've already planned it out. We've done all of our shooting properly, and we have the stuff to fill in the gaps. But then if you're wanting to do like text animations, like I'm going to buy plugins that are going to help produce a really professional look and also save me a lot of time in the process. Likewise, for presets, like if it's a LUT, if I'm editing stuff for social media or whatever it is, like I'll use presets to save me time and to help get a good look very quickly, because also like your time is extremely valuable and it's very important. So it's worth it for me to find the assets, sometimes free or sometimes paid for, in order to help me work smarter and not harder.
Absolutely. I think that, not all of us have the luxury to kind of invest in that stuff, but I will say that just be thinking about that. There's also a lot of free stuff out there that can really just make your life so much easier. And so whatever it is that you're editing on, whether it's a phone using an app like LumaFusion, or maybe it's on a computer and you're using Final Cut like we are, or Premiere, whatever it is, try to look up your video editing program and search for free plugin. And people will just make stuff a lot of times that will work. And, maybe it's a text effect or, some subscription animations. That's a common one that you can find, usually even for free. Even apps like Canva have a lot of awesome resources like YouTube end screens and even some intro stuff that you can go check out and kind of upgrade over time. My biggest advice for this stuff is to just be thinking about, like, what are the common things I'm having to repeat? What do I have to do a lot of every time I edit? Maybe you find yourself constantly spending 10 minutes on creating a text effect that over time, maybe you could get a preset for that really just takes a second. That saves you 10 minutes every time you edit. And if you can find those little things and repeat that process, maybe it's color grading, and you can simply invest in a LUT that you put onto your footage, and then it saves you a lot of time. Those are the things where this really gets super efficient and super, how do we trim down the process so we can focus more on our next idea and not be spending so much time on constantly creating our current idea. Which, one of the things I will actually want to highlight a little bit, I'm going to give a shout out to this video that I made. If you're a Final Cut editor, definitely check this out. This is my top 5 video editing tools, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of it. And then beyond that, if you are a photographer, or even for your YouTube thumbnails, if you're interested in getting some awesome looks out of that, check out Zac's presets on his digital store. I've placed a link in the description below, but you can get a lot of awesome looks with using presets like this with just a single click. Zac, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you designed your presets?
Yeah, so I basically just did it designed off of, it's more of like a film style look, kind of just trying to make things look supernatural and, but also kind of like that filmic flair. So it's stuff that I just enjoy. And, so being able to develop just different colorings and stuff. And so now every time I post a video, or every time I use try to go and create a thumbnail, I'm able to just slap it on, and then it kind of helps to keep everything consistent on my feed, also in like my consistency with my thumbnails. And, so that way people can know that it's me every time I post it, and saves a lot of time, and I love it.
Yeah, I think one thing that people don't always think about when they're starting out, but you kind of develop more over time, is your tones. Your tones are sort of like your fingerprint a little bit. You kind of get to put your own stamp on that. And so, I love presets. I don't always use them just like one and done click. A lot of times I use them as a base, but it helps me get to that result faster. And so I think presets are an awesome tool to invest in. And for video, there's these things called LUTs, stands for lookup tables. That's LUTS. So they're basically like filters for videos. And so if you're looking to kind of get into some of that more stylized look, kind of identify and find your style in your videos, definitely look into some LUTs and just plugins in general. there's links down in the description. Definitely check out Motion VFX. I think that is a great resource if you're a Final Cut editor looking to enhance your quality as well as do it faster. And so definitely check that out. But this is going to move us into our final point before we get into a Q&A. I see you guys have a lot of great questions coming into the comments, so we'll get to that. Hang around. But our final tip for this live stream today is watch like a viewer. And I think this is a really important tip to talk about, because at the end of the day, you have to take a step back from your edit. I think a lot of times we get super into the edit. I, for one, it's my favorite part about video. It's why I love video so much. It's why I have been a full-time videographer for, 6 years or whatever it's been now. I absolutely love editing, and it's my chance to get creative. It's my chance to, have a lot of fun with it. It's my art form. It's all of that stuff, and that's great. But at the end of the day, you have to find a time to step away and then come back with fresh eyes and experience it not as the creator, but experience it as the viewer, and ask yourself honestly, be super honest with yourself. Am I finding the information I need as a viewer who has no attachment to this project, who didn't make this project, didn't put blood, sweat, tears into this project, but just found it? Am I getting the actual information that I need, or the value that I need, the entertainment that I need? If you're trying to do entertainment stuff, is it funny? Is it whatever? Is it, if it's more of a film, like, is it inspiring? How do I feel? And maybe invite a friend or someone around to come share it, send it as a private link to someone and just ask, like, what do you think about this? Get some feedback from an actual viewer who's not invested in it like you are, because sometimes we can kind of blindside ourselves a little bit with certain choices that we worked really hard on, when at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter that much for the actual intent of the video. So watch it like a viewer. Zac, what are your thoughts on that concept?
I mean, you said it really well. I think it's just important. Like, you can get so ingrained, and you should be attached to the work if you're really passionate about it. Like, you should care. And I think sometimes that is to a fault. And I love what you said about really just introducing other people who are like trusted sources, like who are gonna, like, not just agree with everything that you agree with, but they're gonna just watch it with those like eyes of just like, oh, what about this thing, or what about that? I had just the other day, my wife is a great source for this, because she'll tell me straight up how it is. And she watched one of my videos, and she's like, oh, well, like, she was like maybe 30 seconds in, she's like, oh, well, you should talk about this. And then she like said to herself, she's like, oh, well, I'll just watch the video, and like, I'll let it process first, like, because maybe I did talk about it, but it just wasn't the way that she was thinking it was. But it just helps to like just see it differently. And I think that's always really beneficial, to have other people just looking at it, maybe just kind of helping you process through it. If you feel like, you want to help get better, I think having those trusted sources of people that are viewers, and then they help you to ultimately become a better storyteller of what it is you're trying to convey to them. And it'll make you a better creator in the long run.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that, if you guys are new to the channel, you may want to go back and watch a couple of the chats that Zac and I have had here before. But this is something that we mention a lot, because I think it's super important. And you need to surround yourself with some people in your life that can be those resources for you, where it's like, hey, I need some actual constructive criticism. And Zac is actually somebody for me that I go to a lot. Like, hey, what do you think about this lighting? What do you think about this thumbnail? What do you think about the way I titled this? But then other times I need people that I just need encouragement, and Zac gives that to me too. But there's other people in my life, like Michaela, my wife, where it's like, hey, what do you think about this video? And she can actually encourage me in the things that are good about it, rather than just kind of saying like, hey, you need to fix this or whatever, because I need more of a boost of like, I'm actually not feeling confident about this. What are your thoughts? Is it actually any good? And so know kind of who your people are and go to them for the right reasons, because you don't want to go to the constructive criticism person when you're feeling really down and just need some encouragement. Now, fortunately, Zac is a little bit of both for me, but I have other people in my life that I definitely wouldn't go to when I need just a boost of confidence, you know? And so be aware of who you're talking to when it comes to that type of stuff. And it will be really important. But again, just with these projects, you know, with your YouTube videos, keep the viewer in mind. It all comes, and that comes down to our very first tip, which is having a game plan. Why are you making the video? That's a big question to ask yourself in the very beginning of it all. Why would I make this? Why? Who is this helping? Who is this for? And then answer those questions with your edit. You know, make sure that everything you're including or excluding is helping that goal for the viewer. And so I think that's a good place to kind of transition into our Q&A. All right, we're going to get into some Q&A time. So guys in the chat, everybody just start asking some questions. I'm going to start scrolling through some stuff and picking out some things in the meantime, because I think this is going to be a great time to answer some of the questions. Just scrolling through. Let's see. Oh, here's an interesting question. Color Finale or DaVinci Resolve, which is best for color grading? So we're getting decently technical with this question, but it's a good question. I think that there's not really a right or wrong answer to this. I think it's going to be really which program is best for you. What do you need the program to do? And then is it going to accomplish that in a way that is efficient and makes sense for you? So whether you're using Color Finale, which is really a plugin for Final Cut Pro, or if you're using something like DaVinci Resolve, which can go really in depth with a lot of stuff, you know, that's going to be more dependent on you. I think for YouTubers and YouTube videos, you usually don't need to go crazy in depth unless you're like a filmmaking channel and you're trying to make really crazy films. So my advice would be, first of all, see if your platform is going to support that, something like Color Finale, and then how is it helping you? You know, Zac, what are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. Like I feel in the context of YouTube or honestly any real, like if you're doing freelance work, I feel like what you use as far as editing programs, software, or like what you use for your color grading, I feel like just making the decision of which one to use, I feel like that doesn't matter so much, because ultimately it's what does the final product look like. And if you love the final product and someone edited in Final Cut, great. If you love the final product and it was done in Premiere, awesome. Same with the DaVinci Resolve. But when it comes to like color grading, I know from some channels that I watch and just from general information, it seems like for Hollywood and like real big time production, like DaVinci Resolve seems to be where a lot of people do stuff. And you can go like so in depth with so many different things. Like it's insane, like the type of stuff that you can do in DaVinci Resolve. And it's a free program. So even if you're looking for like a free video editor or something like that, just to see what else is out there, you can try out DaVinci Resolve. I think there's some limitations, like your computer needs to have like a certain amount of RAM or whatever in order to operate it, but it's worth trying out. It's pretty, I mean, I've tried it before and it's just, there's a lot of crazy stuff that you can do in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit. We have this question from Hamza. I want to buy camera for YouTube video, but there's no money. I can't afford it. So what should I do now? And then there's going to be a follow-up question, which is any suggestions for saving money for a camera? So I think that's a great question. I think this is something that we get asked a lot, just doing the type of channels that we do. My biggest thing is don't worry so much about the camera yet. I would just say, like, what do you have already? Like, what do you have access to? Anything. If you have access to a phone, if you have access to someone who has a phone that you can borrow occasionally, use that and start learning on it, because the camera will not make you better. It may give you a better image, but it will not make your videos better. And so my biggest thing is, before you worry about investing in a, high quality camera, focus on making your skill high quality, because that's going to be a lot better for you. And then in addition to that, suggestions for saving money on a camera. This is something that I personally do: buy used, buy used, because it will save you so much money. The minute you get a camera, the value will instantly depreciate. It's much like a car, because if you're like me, you're going to use the heck out of it. And I think that it's a lot easier for me actually over time that I found to just go ahead and buy used, because it makes me not want to baby it as much. When I get a brand new piece of gear, it's like, oh, this is pristine. I don't want to use it. I don't want to mess it up. But when I buy used, it's like, it has a little ding on it already. As long as it's not affecting the performance, that's fine, because now I'm more than ready to go out and shoot with it. So definitely look for some used deals. Zach, do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, just finding used deals, like you said. And if you have, friends or like people or somewhere you work, if there's, cameras available to you that you might be able to get access for, or potentially even rent, then I'd say give it a shot. When I started, I did not own a camera. Ben kind of helped me get started with all this. Not kind of, he definitely did. And so I just would follow Ben around, and he's like, hey, can you come help me with some music videos or for some weddings? And I was willing to kind of be the person to just grab light stands and do different things like that. And then he let me use like his third or fourth camera to do little things here and there. And that was a really good like entry point. But I didn't buy my first camera until, I don't know, maybe 6 months after I started, and I bought it used. I remember actually I was texting you, Ben, like, is this a good deal on eBay for this A6300? And then I bought it, which was awesome, but then I had to buy a lens and like I had to wait like another 3 weeks before I could get the money to buy a lens. And then you just progressively build it up over time. And I think there's such a focus on like newest, latest, and greatest, which I understand. But not everybody needs to do that, especially when you're starting out. Like if you can get yourself a inexpensive like Rebel T3i or T2i or something just to get started, like find those used deals. As long as it's working fine, if you can look it up and like actually somewhere, maybe it's Facebook or Craigslist, you can actually go out and like feel it, touch it, make sure it works, then, go that route.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Ben, can you mention the software that you're using for streaming? Yes, I'm using StreamYard. It is not a free software. I think you can use it for free, but it's watermarked. But it is super awesome. Definitely go check it out if you're looking to get into live streaming. It's super easy to use and does a lot of this cool stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get another question from you as well. Zach, where do you get your music?
I get my music from Soundstripe, and I used code Creative15 to get 15% off.
You heard it here, people. You heard it here. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Moving on to another one. This is an interesting question. Presets or creating our own? Yeah, I think that's a great question. My advice would be go ahead and maybe get a preset or two so you can kind of see how they work and kind of get used to how they operate. And then you'll start to figure out what it is that you like about them or don't like about them. And then you can create your own, definitely create your own. I think that's the best way, just to start with something, figure out what you like, what you don't, and then create your own. I'm going to go ahead and move on from that. This is an interesting question as well. Melody Loves Luna says, do you have any tips for knowing what fluff you should cut out of your videos? That is such a good question. And something I really want to think about for a second. So Zach, do you have any initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like finding what's not a necessary part of a video that you can cut out. Ben and I were just talking about this yesterday, but like I look back to my first YouTube videos and like nothing, like no matter what I did, I like always had them around like 10 minutes or something like that. And recently I've been more on like a 5 to 6 minute kind of track with my videos. And I've been able to do that by like cutting out the fluff. And part of that's having a little bit more of a plan of like succinct, like I want to say point number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, do my outro. And so I think knowing that, but then also if you're saying something that you've already kind of said already, if you're reiterating something that doesn't need to be reiterated because you already said it, those would be good things to cut out there. Also, like long pauses in between like your speech, I think could also help, unless you're trying to do more of a unbroken take, like connecting with your audience. But tons of people will cut out like little gaps and pauses. And I think it's to try to keep people engaged when you're communicating through YouTube, just because there's so many options and so many things that you can do looking at them. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think you really covered that well. I think it's watching for areas that you're repeating yourself, and then also cutting out just those pauses. Things like that make such a big difference. And just again, focusing on what is like really dialing in what this video is about. So whatever it is that you're making, like say it's a, tutorial, you're showing someone how to do something. Focus on, is everything that's in this right now adding to that actual goal. The goal is to teach someone how to do this thing. Now I'm not saying you can't, be personal and tell some stories or whatever. Those can be great and those can serve a purpose. But, trying to make sure, again, watching it as a viewer, is it too long? Is it too distracting? We heard some other YouTuber say, usually about 20 seconds and then switch, so it's kind of like, as far as, putting something else on the screen, or maybe even less than that, because more and more we're getting so used to TikTok content and reels and YouTube shorts where it's like quick on to the next. So don't let stuff drag out too long without changing it up for the viewer. And that will make a really big difference with your viewer retention and all of that good stuff. So moving on. Say, oh yeah, go ahead.
Just one other thing to that too is just only just use the time that's necessary to do to communicate your thing. So I did a video on like how to create a Lightroom preset in under 60 seconds. Now there's a few things that like could take it longer than that, but the meat of like, if you want to do it, you need these, few steps, and literally you could do it in less than a minute. And so that's why the video was so short, because it didn't need to be 7-10 minutes to explain something that's actually a very simple process. So I think that too, just like if maybe your topic or the thing you're trying to communicate doesn't necessarily need to be so long, then, there's no problem with it being a shorter video.
Awesome. Here's another one from Marvel Analyzer: Final Cut or Premiere? It's a good question. This is just a personal preference, and it kind of comes down to what type of computer you have. If I have an Apple computer, I'm kind of deep into the Apple ecosystem. And so for me, Final Cut is a no-brainer. I also started on Final Cut when it was like Final Cut Express 4, and then Final Cut Pro 7, and then Final Cut Pro 10. And so I've always been using Final Cut. Now I have tried Premiere and After Effects as well. I know After Effects pretty well. I've done Premiere because I've had to on a couple of projects. And me personally, I like Final Cut better. I think it's a lot faster. And that's kind of a general consensus from a lot of people, is Final Cut on a Mac usually performs with 4K footage about 4 times faster than Premiere does. And so just something to think about. If you have an Apple computer, try out Final Cut. As it stands right now, it's a one-time purchase. So I bought Final Cut a long time ago, many years ago, and it was about $300, $250, something like that when I bought it. And I've gotten my money's worth over the years, because Premiere is a subscription price. So you have to pay again and again and again. So over time, it will be a lot more. So just something to think about. That's my opinion. Zach, do you have any quick thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I also use Final Cut. So it's the thing I started with is, well, actually, I started with iMovie. So for really wanting to get there. And then I was using this other app on my phone for a bit before I had a computer that could handle like actual footage. So that's another thing too. I don't know if people consider is like, You got to have a good, or at least a capable computer to handle the footage if you have a good camera. But yeah, so Final Cut's just quick, easy. Premiere, I've heard just even like still like in 2021, it's like there's so many issues with it crashing constantly and stability. And so Final Cut's really solid. And so I just enjoy it. It's just quick and easy to use.
Awesome. And we're going to move on. This will probably be one of our last questions. Feel free to edit is asking a budget lens for YouTube with a max aperture. I understand what you're saying. And so this is going to come down to knowing, I don't know what kind of camera system that you're on, but I will say a great budget option for most camera systems is what they call a nifty 50. That's going to be a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens. Now it is going to be a little bit tight for this type of talking head stuff, but if you move your camera further away, you can get a really nice depth of field, get that blurred out look. And it will look really good. And it's usually around $150 to $200-ish for a entry level nifty 50 lens on pretty much any system. So my advice would be to maybe start with that so you can get that nice depthy look for your B-roll. And then if you move the camera further away for your talking head stuff. Yeah, so I think that's a good one to kind of end on for now. Again, we wanted to do this live stream because ultimately, we just wanted to share some editing tips with you guys and just kind of, I wanted to hang out with you all. I wanted to have Zac on the channel again. So Zac, thank you for joining us here on the channel. It's been awesome just to get to hang out with you guys. Thank you so much for all of you who are participating in the polls and the community tab and subscribing, liking, and all of that good stuff. And, I'm just excited to keep making content for you guys. I've got some really cool stuff coming up. So I'm really just hang in there because, this coming week, hopefully I'm going to be releasing some super fun stuff. So stay tuned for that. Zac, any last thoughts, any last words on the stream before we depart?
I just want to say thanks for having me, Ben.
Oh, he's bringing out the guitar. All right.
That was awesome. You want me to play something, so there you go.
Oh, great. That was amazing. We had a little mini concert too. So much fun. Awesome.
Epic.
Cool. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the stream. Any of the stuff we mentioned for resources, if you want to check out Zac's presets or some other videos that I was talking about, there's a bunch of stuff down in the description. So make sure to check that out. And before you guys leave, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and as always, stay creative. Peace.